financial markets in turmoil.
What are the root causes of the financial crisis?
The dollar losing value.
Heading for its biggest loss in nearly 3 decades.
Will Social Security even be there?
I don't know.
Buy or rent?
That's a very good question.
Interest rates.
I'm not so sure.
Where do you put your money?
I don't know.
Welcome to the show that answers your questions. This is Follow the Money Weekly with your host, economist, and best-selling author. Here's Jerry Robinson.
Friends, welcome to you all around the world. Welcome to Follow the Money Radio. So grateful to have you here along for the ride. We do have a good show lined up for you today. And today we're going to be talking about, as you can see from the title of the podcast, protecting your financial future. This is really an important topic because when people think about their financial future, they start building their financial assets. One of the things that they really tend to not think about, kind of the blind spot or the Achilles heel, if you will, is insurance, right? Insurance is one of those topics that many people don't want to think about. Insurance is one of the ways that we can protect ourselves, but it's something that you can't buy whenever you need it because it's only available to those who don't currently need it, right? And so today what we're going to be talking about is just insurance a little bit in general, but we're also going to be joined by one of our favorite financial advisors who's also part of our Christian Advisor Referral. We have a service here at Follow the Money we've had for 10 years where we actually refer you to, various financial advisors. If you're looking for advice, we have a stable, if you will, of very well-trained, long experienced, long track record financial advisors who we have handpicked and put into our network. But we have done a lot to vet these people. I mean, we have these advisors, we have to make sure that they have no insurance complaints, they have no violations of any kind with the SEC, and they have to be in business for a long time, and all of them meet that criteria. And many of you have been helped by our Christian Advisor Referral Service, and it's something that you can find on our website at followthemoney.com/advice. Well, anyway, Barry James Dyke is one of the financial advisors who's among that network, and we're going to be joined by him today. He's going to be on talking about what's happening right now with the overall economy. He'll be answering some questions as well about what's happening in the world of, insurance and how are our annuities holding up in the middle of all of this chaos that we've seen in the market in 2020. So we'll be talking with him a little later. But again, we want to talk about protecting your financial future before we bring on Barry. Let's just talk a little bit about insurance and asset protection, income protection, life protection. And one of the things you can do to go deeper on this topic is to go to our 5 levels of financial freedom, followthemoney.com/5 levels. And there you'll find the 5 levels that you can kind of begin to embark upon to achieve true, lasting financial freedom, right? People really want to break free financially, but many people aren't taught how to do so in school. I mean, you go to school and they don't teach you how to even write a check. They don't know how to teach you how to balance a checkbook. They don't teach you much at all when it comes to money. And so if your parents didn't teach you much, or, if you didn't get a lot of instruction in any other way, then you're probably not going to know everything that you need to know to break free, and it can be frustrating for you. And the 5 levels of financial freedom were born both out of wise, time-tested principles and also application, the things that my wife and I have done to achieve financial freedom. It takes a long time to achieve the things that you're wanting to achieve financially, and you have to begin today. There's no better day to start towards financial freedom than today. You got to begin that journey as soon as possible. The earlier, the better. And it really begins with knowledge. And so our 5 levels of financial freedom are really designed to help you in that way, to get you thinking the right way. And one of the things we do is one thing that really is very different, is that we front load charitable giving. Many people put charitable giving on the back burner and they say, well, that's something I'll do when I have money, or that's something that I'll do later. And we believe in biblical principles, and we say, well, that's not exactly the way it's supposed to work. Giving is something that we do at the very beginning. It's a heart of giving that we develop. And so you can get more details on charitable giving. We have a whole worksheet you can download for free, just some really provocative questions to kind of help you with that. If you go to followthemoney.com/giving, I think we have a video there as well. So lots of resources for you for free on our website on all of these topics. But again, today, what I want to talk about is after you are, committed to financial freedom, once you're committed to actually embarking on that journey and taking the steps that are required to begin moving in that direction, one of the things that you're not likely going to think about early in that process is giving and also insurance, right? We all understand that insurance is important. I mean, we all understand it. And in fact, the best way that I've ever heard it described, that your assets are like a castle, right? You're building a castle of your assets. It may be your home. It may be, which Robert Kiyosaki, by the way, would say that a home is not your actual asset because it's actually a liability. But that aside, we would look at some of the assets that you might have, maybe an IRA, maybe you have a 401k, or maybe you have, some gold and silver, whatever your assets are, right? You kind of sit down and think, okay, what are my assets? Well, many people go to build their assets and build their castle, and they spend a long time on that, but they don't realize that they've left themselves exposed because they didn't build a moat around their castle. So they're busy building the castle, but they haven't protected the castle. And so therefore, at some point, life can happen and their castle is going to get hit. And had they had the foresight to sit down and, insure that castle, build a moat around it, if you will, throw some alligators in that moat, kind of keep away, the thieves and the robbers who want to break in and steal. That's the process we're talking about here. So building that moat around the area where you want to build the castle, front loading that, kind of thinking about that ahead of time, is a very powerful thing for an individual to do. So, and we protect our vehicles, right? We protect our vehicles with insurance. Everybody gets the auto insurance idea here. Why do we do it? Because it's the law. I mean, you really can't drive a car without insurance, technically, right? You got to have insurance. So it's a law. But we also do it to protect against lawsuits. I mean, if you hurt someone or something with your vehicles, damages are likely going to be due. And auto insurance companies pledge to cover vehicular damage minus a relatively small deductible payment. And not only do they cover vehicular damage, but the damages that are done if you happen to hurt somebody in your vehicle, that is going to kick in. Now, in exchange for that coverage, you, the consumer, are going to pay a monthly or annual premium, right? You're going to pay money for that. But when you pay the money, your immediate concern should be less focused, I would say, on the amount of the premium that you're paying and more so on the likelihood of your future claims being honored. So when you have an auto insurance policy, for example, you want to be with a company that's not going to give you a bunch of flack, if you have a claim. I mean, that's not the point of insurance. If you have a claim, if you have a problem and you need your insurance to pay for something, you don't want to be on the phone with them for days and days and days and days trying to get someone to answer the phone. You want somebody who is who's rock solid, who has a good reputation. And there's lots of great, auto insurance, property and casualty insurance companies out there who have good reputations, right? And that's what you want. And so the first thing isn't the price. That's not the very first thought we should have. We should instead say, I want to find a policy that's going to cover me, right? And there's some things that you shouldn't buy cheap in this world. I mean, let's be honest. You don't buy cheap parachutes, right? Nobody looks for the scratch and dent sale on the parachutes, right? They want a brand new parachute. They want a good quality parachute before they jump out of a plane, right? Same thing with insurance. I mean, it really is. You don't want an insurance policy that is just the cheapest one, right? That's not the very first thing. Now, if you can get it cheaper, if you can get a good policy at a good company cheaper, well, good. But the price of the insurance, is really the secondary issue. It's the coverage. What are you buying? What is it going to take care of? What are they not going to take care of? Those are the kind of questions that you want to ask. And you can find a much more in-depth discussion on auto insurance, home insurance. Home insurance is very important, and especially making sure that you have some riders perhaps on some of the valuables that you have in your home. You need to take a video or, pictures, or even a video is even better, of the stuff in your house. I mean, there's so many little tips, that you can use when it comes to these things. And we've tried to provide many of those for you on our website. Again, our 5 levels of financial freedom. But we talk about auto insurance, home insurance, health insurance, life insurance, all of that in level 2 of our 5 levels of financial freedom. And by the way, buying insurance is a big financial step. It really is. And for many, it can be daunting. And so that's why we have those resources available to you. Another incredibly important insurance policy that you can buy is disability insurance. And many companies actually offer heavily subsidized disability insurance as a group benefit. And often it is extremely cheap. And I would run, not walk, to my HR department to sign up for group disability insurance if I hadn't already. Disability insurance is literally insuring your most important economic asset. What is it? What's your most important economic asset during your lifetime? Well, it's your ability to earn, right? It's your ability to earn an income. If you lost the ability to earn an income, if you lost the ability to work your current job due to a disability, who would pay the bills? Who would cover the bills? What's your plan? If that happens, if you're laid up on the couch, for 6 months, 2 years, whatever the case might be, God forbid, what's your plan? And if you don't have a plan, then you should definitely be investigating disability insurance, because it's going to be your plan B. It's going to step in and cover you. And especially when you look at your place of employment, they oftentimes have, very reasonably priced, if not very cheap priced, group disability insurance. Now, admittedly, it is cheaper to buy disability insurance at work, as well as life insurance and many of these things. But you should find out if the company who offers the disability insurance through your work will allow you to continue it if you leave or lose your job. This is what we call portability. And many times you may buy that group disability policy through work, but then find out whenever you lose your job or you leave your job that you can't take it with you, right? And so now you got to start over. And what if you're not insurable whenever you leave? What if something has happened between the time you signed up and the time that you're leaving your job or losing your job? Well, then you find out that it's not portable and you can't take it. And that's where an individual disability insurance policy purchased from an insurance agent is different, right? Because you own the policy. It's not dependent upon your place of employment. It's not dependent upon you working at that same job, because you have an individual policy. Now, those would be a little bit more expensive, but the reason they're more expensive is because A, you're not getting a group rate, and B, it's portable. I mean, nobody can take it away from you as long as you pay the premium. It doesn't matter where you work. So disability insurance is another one of these things that many people don't think about. And what happens is they'll be busy building their financial castle, and then something happens, life happens, things happen. And then suddenly the things that they were building, the things they were working on, are now becoming, a problem. They have to figure out what to do because now they're disabled, or they can't work temporarily, or whatever the case might be, and they don't have a plan B. And that can really, create some problems. It's the same thing. We were talking about auto insurance earlier. Many people buy the state minimums. They just get the state coverage limits, the absolute minimum, bare minimum kind of auto insurance. And with many of these cars today, they cost so much that your state minimum requirements for auto insurance may or may not cover you, in a big crash or something. And so the way I view it, and what we teach, in fact, whenever I coach individuals, I just say, look, what I do is I actually raise the deductibles on my auto insurance because I have savings. I got my 6-month liquid savings. And so instead of trying to drive the deductible down on the insurance, because I don't want to have to pay a big deductible, I have money in the bank for a deductible. That's what my savings is for if I ever need to use it. So if my deductible on my auto insurance is $250, well, what I could do is I could raise it to $1,000, and then that money that I save, now I can go buy a disability policy with it. You see, because I have money in the bank, I can actually raise my deductibles on my insurance, whether it's my auto insurance. I don't have to have a $250 deductible because I have money in the bank. So I can raise it to $1,000 or $2,000, right? How many wrecks do I plan on getting into? Hopefully not too many. But I got money in the bank to cover the deductible. And so since I have money in the bank to cover the deductible, then I can raise the deductible. And by doing that, what am I doing to the price of the policy? It's going down. And so the money that I save on that auto insurance policy by raising the deductible, or something else, even like a health insurance policy, if you raise the deductible, what's going to happen to the premium? It's going to go down. So when you do that, you free up money to be able to buy, other types of insurance. There's also the umbrella policy, which is extremely important, which really is what they call it an umbrella because it kicks in over and above your property and casualty kind of insurance. It kicks in over and above your home insurance or over and above your auto insurance. So in the event that something really oddball happens, on your property or, in your vehicle, and there's some sort of major expense that outstrips the normal limits of what you've purchased, then the umbrella policy kicks in over and above that. Usually you buy a $1 or $2 million umbrella insurance policy for, a few $100. It's just a couple $100 or so. It's not very much. But again, these are the things that the wealthy do that many people who are kind of coming up in trying to build financial freedom, they don't think about these things. They don't realize they have gaping holes in their plan. And so if anything goes wrong, they don't have protection, and it's going to cost them, terribly because they're not prepared. Look, there's also long-term care insurance, right? Long-term care insurance. This is the insurance that pledges to fund nursing care and living assistance in our final years. And obviously, very few people are willing to even think about this, let alone spend money on it today, when we're not even sure if we're ever going to use it, right? So long-term care insurance is a real specialty kind of insurance market, and it handles a very delicate topic, as does our final example, which is life insurance. Life insurance has got to be the most misunderstood financial product. It has to get the most misunderstood financial product award. I mean, it has to go to life insurance. And life insurance is a difficult topic because it forces us to imagine our own deaths, right? Let's be honest. No one falls out of bed in the morning and wants to think about, let alone plan for, their death, right? So it's very understandable why people tend to avoid that topic. And I got my life insurance license many years ago, and I have been a huge proponent of making sure that people have life insurance. Even if it's just simple term life insurance to cover your bride, right? Those of you who are out there and you're married, you have children, you may have the Adonis complex. You may think nothing's ever going to happen to you, but the fact is the Mack truck theory is still in place, right? You can walk out in the middle of the road tomorrow, Mack truck hits you. It's just how it works. I mean, your life is finite. You will come to an end at some point, right? Because tomorrow is not promised. And many people, if we really just did the math right now and said, if something happened to me right now, if that Mack truck theory kind of came in right now, what would happen to my spouse? What would happen to my children? Would my spouse even know what to do? Have we even talked about it? Do I have a will, right? These are all the things that I'm talking about that many people neglect, not because they're bad people, not because they don't want to take care of their family, but because they don't want to think about these things, right? They don't want to think about living in a nursing home. They don't want to think about that, let alone start paying money for it right now. They don't want to think about death. They don't want to think about what that means. And writing a will even is very difficult. But I encourage each of you, I'm telling you, every single one of you need to have a will. Because if you don't have a will, guess what? The state has one for you waiting, right? They're going to divide up your assets the way they see fit, right? So if you don't tell people what you want done with your assets, if you don't make it clear, then the state is going to have, same thing with, guardianship for your children. If something, God forbid, happens to you before your children are of legal age to be able to make their own decisions, who's going to take care of them? All you have to do is spend a few days with an estate planner or a financial advisor to find out the real problems that actually happen on a regular basis every single day. Every single day, these things are real problems. And so you can head off all of that. You can prevent those kinds of obvious headaches that could happen in your own family and protect your family by just going through our level 2 of our 5 levels of financial freedom. And you don't have to buy life insurance. I guess you have to buy auto insurance. It's required, but you don't have to buy health insurance, right? There's some things that you just don't have to buy. Now, it's okay if you make those decisions. If you say, well, I'm going to have a plan B. I have another alternate form of funding for this thing, and I've already got it figured out. Well, fine. If you have an alternate funding mechanism to take care of a major medical emergency, or, if you already have everything lined out in the event that you die prematurely, then fine. If you have plenty of money to take care of some sort of need for living assistance, later on, or if you have plenty of money stored away in case you're disabled, then perhaps you don't need those insurance policies, right? But the fact is that many people do need them, but they just don't want to think about them, right? And that's what I'm talking about here. Life insurance is, like I said, is probably the most difficult topic to think about. And sadly, many people wait until they need insurance instead of just buying it ahead of time. I mean, you can't get in a wreck and then go buy auto insurance, right? You can't become disabled and then go buy disability insurance. As one of my mentors once said, there are no do-overs when it comes to insurance, right? When it comes to life insurance, especially, and disability insurance. You can't die, then go buy life insurance, right? That's my point. You can't die, then go write a will, right? So what do people just not get about life insurance? Why is it so misunderstood? Well, my guest today, Barry James Dyke, is a financial advisor with decades of experience and several popular books to his name. We've talked about them. We've interviewed him on the topic of his books. In one book in particular, though, which is entitled The Pirates of Manhattan, Barry revealed that many Wall Street banks and even the Federal Reserve were outsourcing their retirement plans wholesale to the insurance companies. And he also revealed how many major corporations, many of the top Fortune 500 companies, are outsourcing their top executive retirement plans, not to Wall Street, right? Not to good growth mutual funds, right? They're not throwing it in the casino. They're actually giving these retirement plans to insurance companies to manage, right? So and what's interesting is the average American is underinsured. His two biggest assets, if he has any, are his primary residence and his 401k or IRA. But he doesn't have an insured retirement. I mean, the idea of the pension is almost gone now. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a pension still, that's amazing. But most people don't have a pension. They don't have an insured retirement. They don't have a guaranteed lifetime income, right? So no insurance company is on the hook whenever the average American is ready to retire. Meanwhile, the Wall Street banks, corporate America, and even the Fed are providing an insured retirement plan for their top execs instead of leaving them at the whims of the stock market. So this is, of course, very ironic because Wall Street, as Barry James Dyke points out in his book, tells us to buy term insurance and then invest the difference, right? Because they want our money so they can earn fees on it. But at the same time, these same outfits that are telling us to buy term and invest the difference, they aren't giving term insurance to their top execs, right? They're not luring in their top talent with temporary insurance, right? They're giving them, guaranteed insurance, lifetime incomes, insured by an insurance company that's not at the whims of the stock market. And so that's really what Barry James Dyke's message has been for many years. And I think it's very fascinating. And I think it also just goes hand in glove with what we talk about when it comes to insurance. It's important for you to know your options, know what's available to you, and then make your decision. There's no right or wrong answer, really, because it's really up to you. Everybody has their own custom, financial plan. Nobody, can say that this is what everyone should do when it comes to different types of insurance. But of course, until you've actually looked at all of your different options, you may not know what's right for you. So that's really what this particular podcast is all about. It's just empowering you to be able to make those changes, to make those changes in your plan or purchase those insurance policies that you might need. And we'll be talking more in some future podcasts on some of the different types of insurance. I really want to talk about term insurance and permanent life insurance. I think those are really misunderstood. We'll do a future show on that. But life insurance in particular, which Barry James Dyke is a specialist in, it's a powerful estate planning asset. It's a powerful estate planning tool that is technically similar to the Roth IRA, but with many more moving parts. And so this is why it can be used in such very creative strategies and create really cool solutions with life insurance. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a break. And on the other side, I'll bring Barry James Dyke on. We'll talk about what he's been focused upon lately. We'll talk about what's happening in the state of the economy, and we'll dive into what he thinks about the current state of insurance and annuities in this current, very different environment that we're living in amid our public health crisis. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Radio, and 2020 has been a trying year for our world, for our country, our communities, our families, and even for our finances. And now, more than ever in these trying times, you need a financial plan. Back in 2010, when I started Follow the Money, I did so with a mission to help people just like you get on the road to financial freedom. We even launched a nationwide financial advisor network designed to connect you with a trusted financial counselor so that you could create a sound financial plan and even plan for retirement. If you're seeking wise financial counsel in these trying times, I encourage you to visit our website at followthemoney.com/advice. Once there, you will be able to schedule a completely free 15-minute financial strategy session personally with me. During this free 15-minute meeting, I will ask you a few questions and provide you with insights for taking your next steps towards financial freedom. Maybe you just need to get a will or buy term life insurance, or maybe you need a full-blown retirement plan or estate plan. No matter what your current needs are, our Christian Advisor Referral Service stands ready to help you achieve your financial goals. Take action today by visiting followthemoney.com/advice and schedule your complimentary 15-minute financial strategy session with me. I look forward to speaking with you about your financial future. Go to followthemoney.com/advice today. All right, well, joining me on the line today is a good friend, a friend of the show. You know him well, Barry James Dyke. He is the president of Castle Asset Management, and he is the author of several books that have been very eye-opening for people in our audience, and I know for many others as well. Barry, it's wonderful to have you back on Follow the Money Radio. Thanks for joining us today.
Jerry, thank you so much for letting me be your guest. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Absolutely. So I want to dive in because you have been helping our folks. You know, you're part of our Christian Advisor Referral. You've been a long-time integral part of that network, and we've helped a lot of people over the years. And right now we're going through something very different. I mean, you've been in the business now, in the financial services business for, some time, and you've seen a lot of ups, you've seen a lot of downs. 2020 is one for the books with the public health crisis that we have. I'm curious, how has the current public health crisis impacted your industry? What does it look like in the financial services industry? Do you see more demand for people wanting to create a financial plan? Are they seeing what's happening and they're rushing to make a plan, or are you seeing the opposite?
Well, I think there's definitely no question that there's a much greater demand, Jerry. There's no question about that. People desperately need help now more than ever. There's no question about that. The problem is that what you're having is that we live in a plutocracy, if you will. And I know I love this country as much as anyone, but what has happened is that the giant asset managers are essentially controlling the whole narrative on this. I mean, if you look at the giant asset managers such as Fidelity, Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock being the biggest, okay, they control most of the assets now. And what has even happened, which is even more sad, is that what we're seeing is that more than 50% of the money is going into passive index funds, which I'm a believer in modern portfolio theory just as much as anyone to a certain extent. But essentially, they've turned into a bunch of communist funds. And what I mean by that is that there's actually no accountability whatsoever in these passive funds, and it's tragic, because one of the first rule, and a lot of my work, Jerry, as you know, is done involving retirement planning. But the first rule of every retirement plan, I think you would agree, is that the main purpose of retirement plan is to produce retirement income. Would you agree, Jerry?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it has to be the foundation.
That's the foundation. Well, that's been thrown out. That whole rule book has been thrown out the window. So it's now about how much can we gamble and how much can we gamble and more gamble. And it's sad because that is the purpose of retirement plan, is to create a lifetime income stream. And as you know, in financial planning, creating income streams is really one of our most important things to do. But everyone sees that they want to keep gambling and gambling more. And it's like with Jesus, it reminds me when Jesus is on the cross and the soldiers, throwing the dice at Jesus' feet. That's what kind of the culture we're kind of involved into today. So I think there is some more need for independent planning, but the giant asset managers are now saying they can do this. And all due respect to 26-year-olds out there, you can't really help people too much with a financial plan without many years of experience in the industry. But that's what we're seeing today.
Interesting. So yeah, so there is a demand. People are seeing that they need to do something. I mean, obviously when things like this happen, you would hope that it would push people to realize that I need to plan, I need to have something in place, and especially now. But you're making an interesting point, is that a lot of the places that you can put your money are even more rife with risk now. They're more rife with over leverage now. So it makes it kind of a challenge for the average individual who's trying to plan for retirement. He almost wants to throw his hands in the air and say, well, gosh, it looks like a big casino. And let's point that out, Barry, because that's something that you've talked about for some time, especially for those who have not heard your core message before from the Pirates of Manhattan, this book that I first read that first turned me on to you many, many years ago. And it struck such a vein because I knew it was true. Talk about the research in that book for those who are new to your message and what they may not know about Wall Street.
Yeah, so that's the book that put me on the map. Thank you, God. And thank you, God, Jerry, for guys like you. I've sold more than 33,000 copies of my books now in 23 countries off the internet. It's pretty amazing, And I've just sold them off my website. It's not even Amazon. Actually, they mark up the copies on Amazon now, but ridiculously amount. But no, the first book I came out in 2007, I explained why banks are unstable, why mutual funds don't work generally, and they don't, because we don't really know what the future is going to bring, or ETFs now, which is really kind of kicked into overdrive. So what I explain is that it's always about using and abusing other people's money, and this is nothing. I don't know which in the Bible says nothing's new under the sun, but they've just brought it into a more sophisticated, more opaque and non-transparent world, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And thank you God, I have a big following with the advisors around the country, who read my research, and they're actually making a lot more money than I am on this stuff. But it's gross. And the thing is that recently, and I think if people want to sign up for my interviews, which I'm doing on barrymdike.com, I am putting together these videos, videocasts, if you will. It's pretty common, not just in the U.S., but in the UK, Canada, and Australia. And it's really kind of a variation of the theme, where essentially everyone's being stuffed into target date mutual funds, which no one is going to understand, and really, and this is where I Cerulli Associates in Boston, Scott Smith did the research. I think they expect to be about 83% of all new funds going to target date funds, which are awful. But this is because we live in a plutocracy, and they become part of the retirement plan since with the Pension Protection Act of 2006. Which was essentially another airline bailout bill. But in any event, so what has really happened is that we created a model, Jerry, where the people closest to the funnel, i.e. the Wall Street investment banks, the giant asset managers, and now the private equity firms and hedge funds are guaranteed to make money with other people's money. But most people, if 1 in 100 people understand this, I'd be surprised. We talked before. I've been working on the book on the Pirates 3 about private equity. So this whole thing's even gotten much, much worse, Jerry, because the Department of Labor recently allowed, in June 2020, the Department of Labor allowed private equity into target date mutual funds. So that's like giving private equity is like giving a retail investor, or it's like giving a 6-year-old a circular saw. These things are so dangerous, but no one's really talking about it. But thank God for outlets like yourself, and so all this stuff, all these, and people don't understand their money and their high yield funds, Jerry, as you know, which are really high yield. What are high yield funds? They're junk bond funds.
Right.
People think they have high yield. That sounds really cool, doesn't it? But actually what they are junk bonds. And people don't know that since 2000, Jerry, roughly 360 major corporations have gone bankrupt using junk bonds. And so, and they end up in people like Vanguard or State Street or ETFs, whatever. So it's more treacherous than ever.
When you bring up the corporations that are going bankrupt, it reminds me of what you're talking about in the book Pirates of Manhattan, and something that's a passion for both of us, and that is the life insurance industry and life insurance in general. You know, so many people, when they think of life insurance, Barry, they think of something that's boring. They think of something that is probably a waste of money, something that they really want to pay as little as they possibly can for.
Yeah.
But as you have pointed out in your book, and as anybody who will just take a deep dive into this topic will discover, is that life insurance in so many ways serves as a bedrock or a foundation for your overall financial plan. And when we talk about corporations going out of business and junk bonds being dangerous for investors, tell us how many mutual life insurance companies have gone bankrupt during that same time. I know you keep tabs on this stuff. How many?
Yeah, I have. In the past 100 years, Jerry, there's been not one person in North America, including Canada, and because I don't know if you have a Canadian reach, but I have a lot of fans of Canada too. Not one person has lost a penny, not one, in 100 years has lost a penny of their investments in either a Canadian or U.S. Life insurance company.
Okay, just stop right there, because that stat is so staggering for the average person who is looking for guaranteed income. Which, by the way, Barry has a book that I highly recommend entitled Guaranteed Income, a Risk-Free Guide to Retirement. But you just said that over the last 100 years, we've been through a Great Depression, and then, of course, whatever this is we're going through now, and many other things, the 1987 crash and all of this. And not a single person during all of that time in the United States of America has lost money by putting money into a life insurance contract. Is that what you said? As far as the
yeah, to the best of my knowledge, and I testify in court on that. But the common dogma or the political thinking is that they're awful. But
who paints that picture, Barry? Who paints the
picture? Guys like Ken Fisher, and the whole thing is he's done so little research, and I'll share this with many people. And I can share this with you off the line, Jerry. But actually, my research is actually, and I can verify this, and I would testify about this in court. That roughly 300 to 400 major corporations. I'm talking about companies like General Motors, Bell Atlantic, British Airways, TRW, BMW, Rolls-Royce, all these major corporations are using life insurance as annuities to fund their retirement plans.
Yeah, every Fortune 500 company, Barry, whenever they do their really big executive compensation plans for their top executives, the HR department knows this, that they're using permanent life insurance to finance these kinds of guaranteed benefits for their executives.
Yeah.
So why do the guys on Wall Street, guys like Ken Fisher and others, why do they ignore these facts about life insurance? Is it all just a rate of return kind of conversation? They're always looking at the return on investment as the only metric that should be looked at, or?
Yeah, well, it's largely, Jerry, it's a result of propaganda. Roughly 40, 50 years ago, the life insurance companies essentially dominated savings. As a matter of fact, around 1905, Jerry, 50 cents in every dollar. Again, I'm making this up. 50 cents of every dollar went into a life insurance company because Wall Street and this crap that's going on now is nothing new. But because generally when companies like and actually, by the way, people should go to my BarryJamesDyke.com and sign up to be part of my Wix mail list, and it's free of charge. But Ted Benna, the guy who created the 401k, he was actually a personal friend of mine. We did an interview last week, and it'll be up in a couple of weeks, and we'll let people know. Is that when Ted sold his 401k business down, he made a whole bunch of money. after he did that, he went about and sold deferred compensation plans funded with life insurance to major corporations. And so, my research has shown, Jerry, you've seen the books that IBM, General Motors, General Electric, ExxonMobil, even the Federal Reserve itself does this stuff. But reaching the general population is very difficult. I think I told you maybe was almost 10 years ago. I actually presented this stuff to Bloomberg, and they refused to publish it. So, but it's all verifiable, and it's sad, but that's God didn't make us bring us into this life to be weak. We have to move forward.
The whole idea of the life insurance being a foundation, that's something that really plays a role in your own practice. I mean, so whenever somebody is meeting with you, Barry, obviously you're talking about investments. You deal with investments, but you front load, and this is what I love about Barry James Dyke, and this is what I would advocate in my own practice, is that you have to build the moat before you build the castle. I mean, this is the old Robert Castellone kind of concept that if you don't think about protection and you're only thinking about building and building and building, well, we know life happens and stuff happens. And so, I think that's such a powerful piece that you bring to the planning table. And so those out there who are listening to this interview and they say, I do need a financial plan. I need somebody to look at what I have. Now's a perfect time. You can go to followthemoney.com/advice, complete the online form, and we will and put in the comments that you want to talk to Barry, and we will send you right over. Or you can contact Barry directly. Go to his website, barrymdike.com, and request a meeting with Barry. But I really want to take this just a little bit further, because you've talked about, I heard you recently call 401ks are basically the road to serfdom, if you will. I'm familiar.
Highway to serfdom.
the highway to serfdom. As opposed to a road. And we're familiar with Hayek's allusion there, but what exactly do you mean by the 401k being the highway to serfdom? Explain for the listener.
Well, and Bob Castellone again, and I know Bob. By the way, Bob Castellone will be in one of these videos as well. I've interviewed him. He's just a wonderful man. But what it is, and Bob Castellone said this, gee whiz, when I got involved with him 25 years ago, is that, a 401k is kind of like you're letting a contractor build a house, but you can't even get inside of it. So with a lot of these people, as you know, Jerry, you'll see people that have $500,000, $1 million into the 401k. It's totally at risk. And the thing is why I call it highway to serfdom. It's really based upon central planning and the state saying, we're going to take care of us. Well, guess what? That never happens. And central planning didn't work in the Soviet Union, didn't work in China. It's not going to work in the U.S. But because, I don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars that these companies spend in lobbying, they've essentially created the mutual fund industry and the 401k in particular, and Ted Bennett knows this, is that the 401k has become a vessel whereby Wall Street essentially controls the whole damn thing. So and the asset managers in particular. So I'll give you a great example. I like examples. Okay, you ever heard of the company called WeWork, Jerry?
Oh, sure.
That was, how much that was valued at about a year ago?
Oh, it was billions and billions. I can't remember now how much. $
48 billion.
Yeah, $48 billion. Yeah.
Okay, it was the shared office space, with the guy, the pot smoking Aaron, whatever. It sounded like kind of a cool deal. But actually, I remember seeing some of the offices when I was down and seeing my kids in Manhattan. But this was a $48 billion valuation. Now, who some of the major investors were of this company? Now, this is a non-public company, but Fidelity was like the largest investor. And then there was, I think, John Hancock was involved, and Vanguard and T. Rowe Price. So they're essentially gambling with other people's money in pre-public companies. So who's getting so you're making all the insiders really wealthy in this. The asset managers are looking for a hit. Wall Street likes it because it's the constant source of money. So it is a highway to serfdom. So they're essentially taking your hard savings and they're controlling it. Now, I'm not against the markets, Jerry, okay? because as you know, if they keep printing money, it's going to go up, and you have the trading thing. But they're controlling other people's money, and and it was to say in the Bible, "My people perish due to lack of knowledge." So this is what's happening more than ever. So and the thing is that when your parents grew up, Jerry, or my parents grew up, it was a lot more difficult for Wall Street to raise money. But today they only have to go to, say, 2 or 3 dozen mutual fund companies or these private equity firms or whatever to raise capital. So it's very, very difficult for people to have any enjoyment on their money. So all the investment risk has been dumped onto retail investors. To me, that's wrong, particularly in retirement accounts when the number one purpose of a retirement account should be to produce retirement income. We've somehow gotten so far away from it, I don't know what to say.
You're listening to the voice of Barry James Dyke, integral part of our Christian Advisor Referral Network. We've been friends with Barry now for many, many years, and he's helped so many of you out there put together a plan or just answer some of your financial questions. Barry, I think as I look out and I see what's happening now, many people are kind of wondering, what they should be doing. I mean, some people right now are resorting to buying gold and silver, right, because of what we just talked about. Yeah, you would consider that to be a good part of somebody's plans.
Of course it is. Yeah, I always recommend it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it's a store of value. Yeah. So
some people are moving towards gold and silver. Others are thinking there's going to be some opportunity, perhaps, in real estate markets around the country. They're maybe looking for opportunities there as we see kind of the fallout of what's going to happen. Others are looking at the stock market. Some are investing, thinking that there's much more room up to the upside. Back in 2009, Barry, had we thought that the Fed couldn't do it, we would have been proven wrong, because the Fed sure did. I mean, they blew that bubble all the way up for 10 years, and they're trying to do it again. And I think investors are in a quandary. What do you think? Now, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but when you look at the stock market, and you know what the Fed has done before, and you know that most people don't have an education on this, and if the Fed says jump, they jump. Do you think the Fed still got it in their gun? They have the ammo to pull this off again for another decade? What do you think? You think they can do it?
No way. I mean, my honest opinion is that nothing goes up forever. I learned from my parents. You can't get something for nothing. What do we have? 40 million people out of work at least, Jerry, right now.
Something like
and you're in Arkansas. I'm in New Hampshire. It's a beautiful area, but I mean, businesses. It's very, very, and was more than 50% of jobs are created by small business. And I have a small business, and people are getting really, really hurt. The problem is that the Wall Street they're really just bailing out their base. And as we know, in 2007 and 2008, the banks got bailed out, and Wall Street, the banks and Wall Street got bailed out, and the little guy got nothing. And so, eventually there will be a correction, Jerry. I'm not God, so I don't know when. There will be one. Always is, and this will be, I think, the granddaddy. I think it's going to be worse than 29, to be honest with you, but only God knows the future. That's why I would get up and read the Bible every morning. But it's definitely going to happen. When? It's like the rapture. When's it going to happen? I don't know. But it's going to happen eventually, and there will be a correction, because it's all these 401ks and these mutual funds and the IRAs. As Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, said, they're all kind of like their economic fortunes are built on sticks and twigs, and there's nothing really solid behind them. Whereas something like a life insurance company is very, very solid. But in any event, so that's, so the question is will there be market correction? There most definitely will be. And the thing is, retail investors, on average, the people have to be more protective than other, because they're really wealthy people. It doesn't make a difference if it goes up or down. If it crashes, they'll still have a lot more money, so they can buy more assets after the crash. So generally, real people have to look out for themselves more than ever.
One of the questions I've been getting a lot, Barry, just even personally here at Follow the Money, is what do I tell my kids about money? How do I teach them about money? And we're going to be doing some things on that topic in the future. We're working on some topics on that because, kids right now are, of course, seeing a lot of the stress that's affecting, their moms and dads right now through all of this. Yeah. And you've been an advisor for a long time. You've explained money to adults for quite a long time. What would you say to those parents out there who are trying to give their kids wisdom on money? Can you just give us a couple of wisdom keys that you would teach a child when it comes to money based upon what you've learned over the course of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry, because I have three wonderful children, and it's been, it's been a challenge even for myself. But out of two of my three kids get it now, thank you, God. To understand, how money in central banks have operated in history, I think first you need to know the facts. And they have to understand things like the dollars that they think they have in their wallet are not dollars, and with their Federal Reserve notes. So I think that's a wake-up call for anybody. So if people listening now pull out a dollar bill out of your wallet, or $10, doesn't really matter. It's not a dollar. You look on it, it's a Federal Reserve note. And as you know, Jerry, the Federal Reserve is a private central bank controlled by banks. And then the thing is for them to understand things like fractional reserve lending. And, I get to know G. Edward Griffith. Have you spoken to him lately, whatever?
He's been on the podcast many times, but I haven't talked to him lately. I know he's getting up there. How is his health? Have you talked to him lately?
I don't know. I would love to talk to him again. But anyhow, so I get to know him actually through you, one of the speaking gigs at Branson, Missouri. But I get to know. But I think read The Creature from Jekyll Island, and learn the story about the Federal Reserve. Or Eustace Mullins, my old mentor Nelson Nash called me Eustace Mullins, but in any event, right. But yeah, so understand the Federal Reserve, understand banking, and understand that the reason for empires that have collapsed throughout history. It's like understand that the Roman Empire did not collapse because of barbarians; it didn't. It collapsed because of the devaluation of the currency. And Jerry, you've talked about this, the oil, petroleum wars, and all this stuff. You've talked about this. So, people really need people need to have a system of honest weights and measures. And I know there's a passage in the Bible that you should have honest systems of weights and measures. But what has happened is that the Federal Reserve and all these banks have really put their thumb on the scale, so they've distorted everything. And what people need to know is that generally on a bank can legally lever their balance sheet by 9 times, but since the shenanigans started going on roughly a year ago in the past September, Jerry, remember that when the Fed started opening up all the repo markets?
Oh yeah.
There's no reserve requirement. Do you know there's no reserve requirements in the banks now?
It went away. It went away. Just like the M3 money supply just went away. And now suddenly there's no reserve requirements.
So the whole thing is people need to understand, and this is I'm not a Marxist, whatever, but this was Karl Marx is right. Essentially, the value of capital has destroyed the value of labor. And the thing is that I am a capitalist. I'm not a communist, but in this regard, Marx got it right. And the thing is that there's really no cost to create capital. It's just an electronic checkbook entry into the Federal Reserve, so they create money in thin air. And as you know, Jerry, if you study history, and I know you have, eventually it develops into something like a Weimar Germany, where people need to wheelbarrows of money to pay for a loaf of bread, and this is all caused by the debt. And anytime you have too much debt, generally the systems will break. And so, so people need to understand how the bank system works. They need to know that no one can predict the future, and they have to stop believing that Wall Street can play God, because they don't know.
That's good advice. And you also just brought up the fact that you brought up the scripture about how my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And then you brought up Marxism, and I thought that was interesting because I had one of the top Marxist professors on this podcast not too long ago. You may know him. You might enjoy interviewing him on your own podcast. His name is Richard Wolff. And he
Richard Wolff, is it the guy in New York?
He teaches at the New School up in New York, and a fantastic communicator. But one of the things that he points out, Barry, and I've read some of his works and different things, and he points out that Karl Marx was a critic of capitalism. And that is that when he looked at capitalism, he saw flaws. He saw things that could go wrong, and he writes about those. And today we have so many people who are fearful to be called Marxists. And I'm not saying that anybody should walk around labeling themselves a Marxist, but if you're a critic of capitalism, then in some ways you share, something in common with Mr. Marx, because Mr. Marx looked at capitalism and said, this is going to break, right? The way that it's set up, the way the industrial capitalists are running things, and the way that the thing is set up, this is going to fail. And so when we criticize capitalism, that should be okay. It should be okay to criticize, because that's the only way you can improve it. But we live in a time now where it's very polarized, and so now it's we're not even allowed to criticize capitalism, or we're considered un-American. Which is incredible.
It's so silly. It's so silly because who's the Margaret? And I'm not a socialist either, because Margaret Thatcher said it beautifully. Which is the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
Yeah. Well, but even a retort to her, perhaps the problem with corporate socialism is that you eventually run out of the middle class's money. Because right now the way it's set up is that the taxes, come from the middle class, because we don't want the rich to pay any tax. So it comes from the middle class, and then it gets siphoned off to the corporations because we can't let them fail. That they're too big to fail. And so right now the system that we have in many ways, is attacking the middle class, and it's propping up, the corporations like you were talking about earlier. Let's talk about the coming tax wave, because this is where your planning really becomes powerful, your planning practice, because we know that with all of this money that's been spent, Barry, the tax wave that's got to be coming is just going to be mind-boggling. And we know that the rich, we know that those in the top 1% have the ears of the politicians. And so they're going to be getting loopholes. They're not going to probably have to pay much in the way of taxes. They get to benefit from all of the handouts, and then they don't have to pay for it through the taxes because they get wiggle room and loopholes. But the average middle class person out there who is working for a living, and he sees what's coming, and the tax bill is going to be due. I guess 401ks would be a perfect example of how to really get hurt by the coming tax wave.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, well, yeah, and that, and that's most people, if I look, if they have accumulate any kind of capital, Jerry, as you know, it's in a straitjacket. It's in a 401k or a 403b or 457. They're all the same. The methodologies, as you know, is first of all, you don't spend money you don't have to impress people you don't like.
Right.
Yeah, you need to have really grow patient capital, and and when you look at it, my mentor. R. Nelson Nash, God bless his soul, the founder of Infinite Banking, really found that really the best place to warehouse capital within a society is within a life insurance contract. And if you're in it with, and it's really, he gave the world a tremendous gift in that if you understand a life insurance contract in the United States, it is the safest place to warehouse liquid capital. There's no question about it. And as you know, my research verifies this is where J.P. Morgan puts their money in Bank of America and Wells Fargo and the Federal Reserve, and the executives from IBM and GE all put their money with life companies, all right? So, but when you understand the banking concept of the idea of creating a pool of capital, and if you're in a state like, let's say, Texas or Florida or New York or I don't know how it is in Arkansas where you are at, okay, New Hampshire's not the great. It's also a very protected asset. One of the keys is really having a pool of capital so you can self-finance stuff, and you don't have to pay banks any more interest, because right now, average American spends 35 cents of every dollar they make on interest charges. And and to me that's criminal. I did a study, Jerry, in Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago. The maximum amount of interest you could charge on a loan in silver was like 10 or 12%, and the maximum amount of interest you could charge on a loan if you paid your interest in barley, because there wasn't money as we know it, was like 30%. And today there's no limit as to the amount of interest you can charge on a loan.
Oh, some of these payday lenders are getting exorbitant.
600-700%,
per annum. Yeah, it's incredible.
But for the people who really love their families and really want to do the right thing, is things like contact us about, go to barryjamesdyke.com and just tell them you get your name from Follow the Money. But definitely warehousing capital in a life contract is still one of the best places to go. I mean, you're getting a 4% guarantee, Jerry. And you know what? Because you know what a 30-year Treasury bill is paying today, Jerry?
Oh, it's
roughly 1.69. Okay. A 30-year Treasury bill, a 10-year Treasury, Jerry, I think is around 79 basis points, less, a little bit around 0.75%. Within a life company, you can get a guarantee of 4%. I mean, if people really understood this stuff, they'd be lined up outside my door, but they don't. And but the thing is that the powers that be, they want everyone to gamble, and gamble more. And what has happened is that there's been some other, I don't know. But when you look at the validity of a life insurance contract, it's still one of the best places to put money in the world. And so that's one of the things they can do. Obviously invest in yourself, and your skill set. Anything, Jerry, as you know, to produce income and income streams, side businesses and so forth. I don't know what your audience does, setting up their own online businesses, things like that. Be entrepreneurial. But my point is that and then when you have enough capital, you can go out and finance the stuff, and you can tell the bank or the finance company to go pounce in.
Yeah, and the other thing too, we've had a few questions on annuities, and we've been seeing a lot of things happen with the yields. Of course, you had just talked about on the bonds. Many of the life insurance companies, I would assume, they invest, in bonds and things like that. So they're seeing declining returns as far as the overall yield they're receiving. So I think one thing we haven't seen a whole lot of, at least in the media, is how all of this is impacting annuities. From your experience, from what you're seeing, are annuities doing okay? How are they holding up amid all of this?
Yeah, they are. They're holding up. And the funny thing is that luckily, because I don't know, it was the last time I talked about, I'm actually on the board of a subsidiary of a major mutual life company, and so luckily I'm able to talk to the president and CEO. And surprisingly, Jerry, believe it or not, a lot of these companies, like in March when they were selling, everything was nailed down. A lot of these people, when they had their good corporate bonds, they were selling them because they need to raise cash. So a lot of these companies, because they're really the best conservators of liquidity, if you will, they had a tremendous buying opportunity. So when everyone was unloading their good corporate bonds yielding 5%, 6%, 7%, good solid stuff, they were buying. So so that's part of it. But also a thing to keep in mind, Jerry, again, is that the purpose of a retirement plan is to produce lifetime income. It's and that's and every time we work with people, no two people are alike, but so we got to produce retirement income and people and a lifetime income, and if we do it correctly, and generally we're pretty damn good at this stuff, we can do a much better job than leaving your money with a mutual fund company, which is now the irony of the whole thing is that these mutual fund companies are saying, hey, this is one of the only things that work. But again, I would highly recommend an independent advisor versus some big giant asset manager.
What's your favorite part of the financial services business? I mean, you've been doing it now for many years. You've had a lot of experiences. You've met a lot of people. What's your favorite part of the whole business?
Well, it's actually, to be honest with you, at this point, I love helping people. I really do. I've been very blessed. I've actually had, believe it or not, Jerry, I've had 61 life insurance claims because I've written so much over the years.
Wow.
But like I had a woman die within about 10 months ago, client of mine, 15, 16 years, and she was in the Wall Street casino. By the way, you go. There's a new website I have, www.camnh.com. It kind of gives you more about the organization. But I had a woman, and she got hammered in losses with Fidelity with the dot-com meltdown. I picked her up after the dot-com meltdown, Jerry, and she had just lost. She lost roughly $700,000. She'd taken out $300,000 at the wrong time, got croaked, and she incurred $400,000 in hits, and then her husband unfortunately died of pancreatic cancer, and he was a leading obstetrician. So make a long story short, so this woman was a depression baby, and just a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she was shell-shocked because she had $2 million when her husband died, and then luckily he had some life insurance and trust and so forth. But make a long story short, she was left with this huge responsibility to produce she had to produce roughly 80% income because she was supporting her whole family. So make a long story short, back in the day, Jerry, we could get really good annuity rates, okay, with the indexes, not as good. We can still be more creative, but make a long story, the woman gave me $1.3 million back in, say, 2004. And when she died this past, it was actually this year, in March of 2020, when she died, I laid it out for the family that essentially I provided like $1.25 million to her in income over a 15-year period, and using trusts and gifting and all that other stuff, fancy stuff, we were able to give the family an additional $1.25 million in wealth. We all did this very, very safely. So that's rewarding. Now, I didn't have the same relationship with the kids as I did I had with the mom, but it was just, I felt really good about what I did.
That's incredible. And when you mentioned, for those who are not, maybe who aren't familiar with what a life claim is, unfortunately, that's kind of sad, but that's whenever somebody passes and then you are the one who shows up with the check. And I think that's incredible because at the very moment, Barry, when, the family is, coming apart at the seams, they've just lost it, they've had a terrible loss in their family and they're getting bills, and collectors and creditors, are all beating on their door asking for money. You're the one guy wearing the white hat who shows up with a check in your hand. You're not there to take, you're there to give. And that's why I look at, guys like you as the solution to this problem. You're the ones who are there to help. You're the ones who don't bring harm. You don't do harm, kind of like the Hippocratic Oath. You're there to help. And, that must be incredible to have 61 memories of handing that check or dispersing that check to a family in need. It must be incredible. It must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's funny. It just validates all the research. And the funny thing is, Jerry, as you know, and I think you're an advisor at some point, people get goofy over money, and they really do. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of families torn apart over money. When, like in this situation, everything was sliced up. It was sliced and diced. There were 3 beneficiaries, and they all profited handsomely. And yeah, and the thing is that when everyone else brings bills, I brought a check. I had another thing, like an auto dealer who was a client of mine. She was 20 years. He was a wonderful guy, and just a wonderful, wonderful man. A self-made guy. Grew up in a 3-decker out north of Boston, and ended up being a very successful automobile dealer. And he got to know me, and he was really stood by me. I went through a very tough divorce and stuff like that, and he stuck by me and helped me. And then he got another liver cancer, when the guy was really weird because he was as fit as a fiddle and didn't really drink at all. But, this is a big deal. Now, when he died, I gave the family like $1.1 million or something like that in cash. But the legal bills, Jerry, and he asked me on his deathbed, help my wife and help me sell the business. and I did fulfill that promise. And but the lawyers who were very good, who I actually brought in, the legal bills on this estate, Jerry, the legal bills were like $300,000 or something like that, and then the accounting bills were like six figures, and then my bill was pretty high because they essentially had to carve out a good part of my 1 years of my career. We're very high, but the thing is that, and we sold the business around like, 5-6 million, but my point is that without that cash, without that life insurance plan, we would have been forced to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And the insurance gave us time.
It gave you options and time. That's right.
It gave us. We didn't have to move. It was a pain, okay, believe me, but it gave us the patience,
Mm-hmm.
and it gave us leverage. Because believe me, you start dealing with some of these high-end automotive tycoons. When I was dealing with one of these, okay, it's these guys are tough, and so the thing is that I guess maybe so we really want to look out for people. We treat people's money as if it's our own. We don't have all the answers, okay? We don't know what the hottest stock is, but we're not stock pickers. We're architects, and let everyone else, because people don't know what's going to happen, and so we just really want to help people, and so that's one of the things which I love to do. And then, as you know, Jerry, I love to write. I love to research this stuff because it's so important, and but people really don't know what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. I remember you brought up that story. I remember another story, Barry, many years ago whenever I was talking to a client, back when I was more active as an advisor, and I actually had my SEC licenses and all that. I was talking to, it was like a light came on for this fella. He had several properties. He was a real estate guy, and he didn't have a job. He had like 30 properties, and they were all kind of on the rough side of town. And I was sitting down with him and his wife, and they didn't have a plan. They didn't have anything. Many like many of these business owners, they just put all the money into the real estate. That's where it was, and that all made sense. But he didn't have any life insurance, and he told me when we were sitting in the room, he said, "I don't need life insurance." He said, because I have these 30 properties. And I looked at him, and I'll never forget this. I looked at him, and I looked at his wife, and his wife, kind of looked sheepish in the room, and I looked at him, and I said, "Are you telling me that are you going to send your wife over to collect rent, in this part of town where you have, and is she going to be able to fix all this stuff? Like, what's your plan for that?" And it was that moment whenever he realized, wait a minute, life insurance, I could take a little bit of the money that I'm making and get some life insurance for my wife. And then I don't have to worry about leaving her this slew of properties which she doesn't know how to take care of. Plus, will she be, does she want to go over and deal with this headache that's a headache of mine now? And on top of that, it also gave him the permission slip then to not have to hold on to those properties until he was dead, because he could actually have the option of selling them and liquidating them and using that money during his lifetime, and his wife would still be covered in the event that he, preceded her. So life insurance and these creative solutions that I know you're doing for your clients, there's so many light bulb moments that happen in a planning session. And if you're out there listening to this, Barry and I have worked together for going on, I guess, a decade now. And it has been.
I think it's past that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's something we want to help you. If you're out there and you say, I'd like to have somebody take a look at what I have, or maybe I just want a second opinion, contact us. The easiest way to do it is just to reach out to followthemoney.com/advice. You can set up a time right there. You can also just call Barry directly. Say, hey, I was listening to the interview with you and Jerry. I want to talk to you. You just give Barry a shout. Go to his website, barrymajamesdyke.com. But Barry, it's been great to have you. We're kind of running out of time here. Any final words, any final parting wisdom for our audience today?
Educate thyself. You know what I mean? My people perish due to lack of knowledge. So everything which I'm talking about, Jerry, it's all true. And it's just remember, when you go into a casino, the house always wins. and Wall Street is just one big casino. So and we'd be delighted to help anyone who any of your listeners, and we're grateful for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Barry, for your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly. Recently, we have been receiving many emails from our listeners commenting on the great help they're getting from our precious metals expert, Tom Cloud. Gold and silver are excellent hedges against the growing threat of coming U.S. inflation. Who's your gold guy? Make it Tom Cloud. With over 30 years experience with precious metals, Tom will answer all of your questions. Don't buy your gold and silver through some call center and pay inflated prices. Call my good friend Tom Cloud and speak directly with him and get all of your questions answered. For a limited time, Tom is offering free shipping and insurance on every gold and silver purchase made by our listeners. Call 800-247-2812. And when you do, tell him that Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly sent you, and he'll throw in that free shipping and insurance on your entire order. Call your gold guy, Tom Cloud, right now for the very best deals on gold and silver coins. 800-247-2812. That is 800-247-2812. All right, friends, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the interview we had with Barry James Dyke. And don't forget our very special offer that we're making to you, that if you do need to have a simple overview of your finances, you want to set up a 15-minute complimentary financial strategy session with me, I'd love to talk to you. Of course, this is a limited time offer. We're not going to be making this forever, but we really do want to help you. If there's anything we can do to help, reach out to us, followthemoney.com/advice, and there you can schedule your complimentary 15-minute financial strategy session with me. I look forward to talking to you. And as always, I'd like to leave you with a final word this time. In fact, Barry James Dyke just kind of stole my thunder whenever he said that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. That's exactly the concept that I wanted to leave you with today. Of course, that is a Bible verse taken from the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6. The idea that I was going to put forward for our final word, which is very similar, is that the unaware are unaware that they're unaware. And that's just something to think about. Remember, friends, when you want the truth about the global economy, just follow the money. Have a safe and prosperous week, and we'll see you right back here next time. Until then, God bless.
The information contained on the Follow the Money podcast is strictly for informational and educational purposes. It should not be construed as specific investment advice. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry Robinson does hold an insurance license and at times may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Follow-up, individualized responses to email or phone requests that involve the rendering of personalized investment advice for compensation will not be made absent compliance with state investment advisor registration requirements or an applicable exemption or exclusion and applicable insurance regulations. Past performance is not indicative of future results. You should be aware of the real risk of loss in following any strategy or investment discussed on the podcast. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before making any financial decisions.